was Moses Lowell? Ask 10 people and you're likely to get 10 different answers. On the surface, Lowell seemed to be a reputable businessman. But sources say he also had a secret life that involved international smuggling and alleged ties to organized crime. Now Moses Lowell is missing. Police suspect that his secret life led him to a violent end and put his aunt, an innocent bystander, in mortal jeopardy.
It wasn't right, nobody being around, and the birds were too noisy. You know birds are noisy, but when they're hungry for a couple of days, they're real noisy.
It was worse than you can imagine. The smell was really, really bad, and the sight was even worse than that, to see all those beautiful birds laying dead in the bottom of the cages, literally hundreds of them. Some cages had up to 30 and 40 exotic birds dead in the bottom of the cages.
The birds that had survived were in desperate condition. Bird expert Howard Voren was among those working to revive them.
We started force feeding those that were too weak to eat, injecting them with fluids in order to combat the dehydration they suffered, and of course filling all the cages with food and water if there were birds left alive in them. It was tough, but it was worthwhile. I think a very small percentage of the birds died after that.
Hopefully we can save this one.
While animal control experts took charge of the birds, sheriff's deputies began trying to understand the puzzling disappearance of the caretakers.
3 live in this cage.
Hey guys, it's me here, Comrade Lavender here, and today I'm back with another anti-capitalism deep dive YouTube video topic. Today I want to do the part 2 version. This is part 2 of my Pure Evil, the Pet Industry Files. Deep dive, capitalism, pet food, wildlife trade, pet dumping, invasive species, animal extinction, child labor violations, etc. I'm just going to be talking about anything that is pet industry related. So before we get started, all my YouTube videos are going to be on the screen right now if they're related to this topic, if you'd like to check them out. So let's get started in this YouTube video topic.
These thriving coral reefs along the Makassar Strait in Indonesia were once nothing more than debris. Poachers were using illegal practices like bomb fishing and reef poisoning to increase their catch.
How the tropical fish pet trade is harming animals and endangering coral reefs in the ocean. Around 80% of exotic fish are imported to the United States are captured illicitly using the toxic compound sodium cyanide. Fishermen spray this chemical onto the fish and stun them. Once sprayed, the fish are momentarily unable to move and breathe, making them easy to catch. Sadly, not all fish pull through from the poisoning. Some die instantly, while others perish a few hours later. Those who do survive this experience are packed up and shipped across the world for sales in pet stores. Not only is cyanide harmful to fish, but it also damages the surrounding environment. Many tropical fish live in coral reefs. When corals are exposed to cyanide, it can have a toxic, devastating effect and cause coral bleaching and death. Additionally, if the toxin remains in the reef, it can further impact other non-target fish who become in contact with it as well. A square meter of reef is destroyed for every live fish caught using cyanide, said biologist Sam Mamakag of International Marine Life Alliance in the Philippines. With the world's coral reef teetering on the edge of extinction, this is no small impact. Over 20 million fish are caught every single year, fueling this $300 million industry. While this might yield great profits, capitalism profits for the pet industry, it is devastating to the world's oceans. The baggy cardinalfish and many other species have become endangered thanks to consumer demand in the pet trade, and considering the fact that scientists have estimated that the oceans could be empty by 2048 due to the immense rate which humans are taking marine species from the ocean. This includes the fishing industry for seafood. In these countries where the majority of exotic fish are exported from, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and the Philippines, it is illegal to use cyanide to capture fish. However, that doesn't always prevent this practice from occurring or happening. Nearly 3 million homes in the United States keep saltwater fish as pets. According to a 2021 through 2022 American Pet Products Association survey, freshwater aquariums are far more common because freshwater fish are generally cheaper and easier to take care of and breed.
The first time I visited one of these big bird markets, I was just shocked and astounded to see the volume of birds that were in the market and the number of different species. The songbird black market is immense. It crosses every border, it's across the globe. We really felt that it was so important to actually start working with some of these species before it was too late, before they were driven over the precipice and became extinct.
Wildlife trafficking openly perpetrated at Satria Bird Market. PETA recently captured video footage of illegal wildlife trafficking at Bali's Satria Bird Market. A shop owner was filmed offering monkeys and a slow lotus for sale. Slow lotuses are nocturnal primates and are a protected species in Indonesia. The trafficking of monkeys into Bali is illegal. Obtaining these animals in order to sell them is a deadly business. Baby monkeys are often illegally abducted from the jungle homes after hunters kill their mothers. The slow lotus at the market was kept in a small barren cage without access to water, and there was no official record of the animal of who is being sold off the books. Many exotic animals who are sold into the ill-informed buyers or acquired as novelty pets on a whim die prematurely or are abandoned when buyers are no longer able or willing to care for them. PETA is calling on law enforcement and the Ministry of Environment and Forestry to investigate this illegal and violent trade and file the appropriate charges against the perpetrators in this industry. Just last year, the same shop owner was caught selling monkeys, who were confiscated. The shop was given a warning and agreed to never sell monkeys again, yet it brazenly continued to sell illegally imported animals. The wildlife trafficker even compares his activities of those to the Mafia. Indonesia's booming cage bird trade is fueling trafficking and threatening bird extinction. Beyond the boxes of chirping parakeets stacked 4 high, 2 bamboo cages hang from the low ceiling. Inside each cage is a chattering lory, a forest-dwelling parrot, endemic to North Maluku, which over the past 25 years has seen its population plummet by between 30 to 50%, according to BirdLife International. Indonesia is a global hub for the wildlife bird trade, given its abundance of bird species and deep-seated tradition of bird keeping. The country boasts over 1,600 different birds, 419 endemic species, and 132 globally threatened birds. At the bird market in Indonesia's capital, Jakarta, thousands of birds are crammed into wire and bamboo cages for sale. Here, buyers can purchase birds from across Indonesia, as well as Asia and Africa. Similar markets operate through parts of Java, Sumatra, and Bali. Dirty and smelly places where dozens of threatened bird species are openly sold. The scale of caged birds trade and how long worried conservationists and many say the hobby is taking an unsustainable toll on Indonesia's wild bird population, but the extent of its impact is hard to gauge. A recent study of bird markets in Sumatra, however, seems to have confirmed a link between Indonesia's thriving caged bird trade and the plummeting native bird populations. A recent study of pet markets in Santa Cruz, Bolivia, found that over 22,000 individuals of 31 parrot species, the vast majority of which 94% were wild-caught, were illegally traded every single year under the Bolivian law. Similarly, large numbers of wild-caught birds are traded illegally in Mexico, with trappers estimated to capture 65,000 to 78,000 parrots every year. One of the reasons why the trade in wild parrots continues is that it is very profitable, with particularly beautiful rare species selling for up to over $1,000 or more. Although many birds are traded within the country of origin, international parrot smuggling is very common. The parrot trade in Mexico is still largely driven by the demand for exotic birds in the U.S., where an estimated 4 through 14% of Mexican wild captured parrots, up to 9,400 birds, are smuggled each year. It's a growing multi-billion-dollar business. Statistics indicate that illegal wildlife trafficking generates between $7 to $23 billion annually. This trade is a vast criminal enterprise. Additionally, it is estimated that 1 out of every 4 bird and mammal species globally is caught up in the wildlife trafficking trade.
This and more is what a PETA observer found inside Brailleon Corporation, a hermit crab dealer that claims to supply PetSmart and Petco, as well as many beach town souvenir shops. Because they don't breed readily in captivity, hermit crabs sold in pet stores and beach souvenir shops are always taken from the wild, where crabs use the shells they find to protect their delicate bodies from the outside world. Hermit crabs would rather lose a limb than leave the safety of their shells. But at Brailleon, workers used a manual lever press to crack open their shells and forced them to choose one of the painted shells commonly seen at boardwalk shops.
How hermit crabs are the victims of capitalism in the pet trade industry. It was an unusual discovery. As the mercury soared to triple digits in Yuma, Arizona, a hermit crab later named Hermie was found near a drip irrigation line at a state park, a victim of the crustacean pet trade. More than likely, he was purchased at a local pet store and then dumped by their owner near a canal behind the park's headquarters before being rescued a few weeks earlier. And some 2,500 miles away in Ocean City, New Jersey, a young boy was seen with a single hermit crab purchased as a vacation souvenir from a local beach shop. This crab was a victim not just because of his shell was tastily painted to resemble a soccer ball, but because he was one of thousands of other hermit crabs bought as mementos. The thoughtless acquisition of these creatures isn't confined to beach retail. In March, the annual conference of the National Science Teachers Association, Carolina Biological Supply gave away hermit crabs as a promotional gimmick. Even mall stores at the mall, such as Earthbound Trading Company, otherwise known as Earthbound Trading Co., at some point sold hermit crabs at its stores a long last time ago. What was the fate of these crabs? Oddly enough, they're probably already dead or otherwise forgotten or dying. Despite this likelihood, this trade in hermit crabs remains a booming capitalist business, a growing market waiting to be exploited by capitalist pigs as people seek out exotic pets who won't pee in their house or vomit on their carpet, or as rich people like to put it, a pet that will match their furniture because the rich people are notorious for pet dumping their pets for petty reasons such as that. There are 500 to 600 species of hermit crabs. Most of whom are native to tropical climates like the Caribbean, South America, Africa, and Australia. Some hermit crabs can be found living along the Atlantic coast in the U.S. Though most hermit crabs are small, the largest species of hermit crab being the coconut crab, who has a leg span of more than 3 feet. Most of these hermit crabs sold as pets in pet stores and at beach stores are the U.S. are purple pincher crabs or Ecuadorian hermit crabs. Purple pinchers are native to the Caribbean, South America, and the Florida Keys, while Ecuadorian crabs comes from the coast of Ecuador and Chile. Since hermit crabs don't bring in captivity every crab in the pet trade has been taken out of the wild. They are then repackaged and transported potentially thousands of miles away for resale to live, often quite briefly, behind the plastic walls of an aquarium tank. There are no reliable statistics on just how many hermit crabs die during transport, get sold, or what their fate may be once sold. Shell Shoddy Inc., a hermit crab wholesaler headquartered in New Jersey, reported in a 2000 New York Times article that it sells over 1 million crabs each year. Though such companies are apparently licensed by the government, the trade is largely unregulated. While some crabs may end up in the care of a person who does truly care about and does want to do the best for the hermit crab and treat like their actual pet, the majority are purchased as novelties by people who do not think ahead of time and die quickly because of the stress the hermit crabs do. Ignorance or neglect when they are later shipped around the globe and sold as low maintenance, easy care, unusual, and very entertaining pets. But as Tammy Sook, Hermes' temporary caregiver, quickly learned, these are not animals who can simply be thrown into a small aquarium tank and fed, as they have unique physical and behavioral needs that must be met to sustain their health and their lives. Indeed, according to a variety of internet sources which do not provide consistent advice, hermit crabs must be provided with a temperature and humidity controlled environment. If they get too hot or dry, they die. They also need an appropriate type of depth of substrate to facilitate the molting process. A variety of empty shells are essential for crabs to find new shells to move to as they grow. A diverse habitat containing hollow logs, caves, driftwood, and other materials for exportation and cover is also important, as the need for crab companionship. Hermit crabs need access to fresh and, depending on the species, salt water. Chlorinated tap water can kill them. The iodine and table salt, if used to make salt water, is harmful to crabs. Furthermore, if the water is too deep, the crabs could drown. Crabs also need adequate calcium in their diets. As omnivores that eat most foods but are sensitive to pesticides and certain food preservatives can be dangerous. Old food and crab droppings must be cleaned up. Fresh food and water provided daily. Their tank or crab nest must be completely cleaned without using soap or store-bought chemical-based cleaners that can harm them, and substrate should be replaced at least once a month. Since crabs are susceptible to fungal and bacterial infections, they may need to be regularly bathed in fresh and salt water or administered antibiotic treatments. Not surprisingly, given such care requirements, the fleeting novelty of a crustacean as a pet, most hermit crabs usually do not live long in captivity. This, along with their relatively cheap price, may explain why some refer to them as throwaway pets or disposable pets, and why there is a pet dumping crisis overall, not just for these hermit crabs, but for every single pet in the pet industry, because people don't think ahead of time. PETA also got involved in an investigation of hermit crabs in this industry after receiving a disturbing complaint and tip about Breedlin Corporation, a self-proclaimed supplier of captive hermit crabs to PetSmart, Petco, and other retailers. PETA took a closer look. Within days of the release of their video, PetSmart stated that one of its suppliers had cut ties with Breedlin. At Breedlin, PETA's eyewitness found that wild-caught crabs were left overnight by the thousands in cramped burlap sacks. Hermit crabs were then dumped into pens so crowded that many were buried beneath other piles of crabs, unable to eat or drink. Instead of sandy shorelines, hermit crabs are forced to live in barren plywood floors. The workers made no obvious attempt to measure humidity levels in the pens, even though hermit crabs struggling to breathe and even suffocate when the air becomes too dry. When water was offered, thirsty crabs clamored for it. These shore-dwelling creatures were never given access to salt water that is critical to their well-being and health. Once again, management apparently did nothing to reduce the crabs' high mortality rates. The owner simply referred to many dead crabs as a waste of money, showcasing why capitalism, the system, is a psychopathic system.
We made an exception and took that rabbit, even though we don't have funds or space right now, but it was an emergency, so we took the rabbit. And we were really lucky that Susan agreed to take it into her rescue and, you know, get it vetted and adopt it out. And then today, George texted me that he was at Holiday again, and he found 5 more rabbits. So he was able to catch 2. 2 are on their way to our rescue right now. Again, we don't have space. I don't know what we're going to do. We're still looking for a home for the rabbit we caught months ago. So I guess we're just figuring it out as we go. I don't know. I'm really stressed. I'm really not feeling great.
Oh, look at that. There are no rabbits, probably because everybody bought them for Easter. That's lovely.
How big it is here. Dumping of animals, it's normal here. Like dump dogs, you know, you can go down Homestead and there's literally a road called Dead Dog Bend because dogs get hit there all the time because people just dump their dogs. There's a place a couple hours north of us in Florida that is overrun with rabbits right now, like hundreds of rabbits because people keep dumping them, and it's like $400. It was $400 to have that rabbit that we caught a couple months ago neutered, and that was with our nonprofit discount. So it's a lot of money. It costs as much as it costs to spay and neuter a dog. So it's a lot of money. And then people don't do their research, and they go to this pet store and they fall in love with this cute rabbit, and then they have it for 6 months, and then they don't want it anymore, and they
Easter, a holiday known for the big pharma dessert concoction known as sweet marshmallow chicks or bunnies that you see at the dollar stores, pastel woven baskets, and of course the ever-mysterious Easter bunny. But its impact of this floppy-eared icon stretched far beyond childhood memories of early morning Easter egg hunts to much more consequential extent, one that is particularly dangerous for domesticated rabbits. Rabbits are the third most popular pet in the United States, behind cats or dogs, as well as the third most abandoned. According to National Geographic, it's estimated that about 80% of those purchased will die or be abandoned and pet dumped outside within the first year. Petco is eliminating the ability to buy pet rabbits following criticism and backlash it got. Petco announced it is recommitting to an adoption-only policy for pet rabbits, citing feedback received in partnership with animal rescue and animal welfare organizations nationwide. Rabbit.org called out Petco, citing the company's blatant betrayal of its promises in 1994 and 2008 to stop all rabbit sales. Selling rabbits in pet stores often leads to impulse buying by customers unaware of the extensive care and significant veterinary costs involved with having a pet rabbit, according to the group of self-described bunny educators. These hasty purchases often lead to summer dump season, when many pet rabbits across America are abandoned outdoors, becoming roadkill or prey for predators. There are no regulations for breeders and private sellers of rabbits, and animals are not sterilized, neutered, or spayed before going to their new home. When their baby grows from an adorable ball of fur into a hormonal terror, unprepared owners are overwhelmed, and they may surrender the animal rather than provide its surprisingly complex needs. This comes at an unpleasant surprise. Shelters and rescues are not anxiously awaiting to welcome another rabbit into the rescues because they are already full to the brim and full to the max. Besides changes in the brain that have made domesticated rabbits more trusting and, simply put, slower and less smart than their wild ancestors, there is an external appearance for which the animals were purposely bred. Even if a given rabbit's primal instincts are strong, a rare fur coat color can make it an easy target for predators. Hence, rabbits no longer possess their wild ancestors' defense mechanisms. Domesticated rabbits were not bred under the selective pressures of running away from predators, dodging cars, or finding shelter and subsistence in conditions of extreme heat or extreme cold. In the words of Antoni del Saint-Esprit, we are forever responsible for those we have tamed.
And we turn now to pets and the new must-have companion in the celebrity set, pigs. That's right. From living in filth and surviving on slop to domesticated bliss, pigs are in, not to eat, but to cuddle.
These pigs didn't look micro to me or anything like Wilbur. Sure, at birth they may weigh 9 ounces, but they grow up to be between 40 to 65 pounds. Jane says big enough to go for a walk, if you have a special license.
It's like a spaniel size, which is...
Like a spaniel, only a little bit different.
Yes.
Actually, too much exercise can give a pig arthritis. I guess that rules out playing fetch.
Teacup pigs are getting abandoned across America. Eva Monroy bought a mini pig for her family and fed it what the breeder instructed and insisted. A half cup of food in the morning and half a cup at night. But the piglet named Hammond started raiding the pantry for food and digging through the trash. A veterinarian they took it to told Monroy that he was behaving badly because he was starving and extremely hungry, and the amount of food was not adequate enough. The breeder promised the diet would keep him at a mere 12 inches tall, but when the pig grew to 20 inches and 180 pounds, my husband couldn't handle anymore. It's either the pig goes or I. So she took the animal to a rescue about 130 miles northwest of Los Angeles. It's a common story playing out nationwide in America. leaving thousands of pet pigs homeless and rescues packed to the brim. The crutch has left many sanctuaries to limit how many pigs they will accept or stop taking them completely. The craze for tiny pet pigs started decades ago and gets reignited every few years. Online sellers offering teacup pigs for thousands of dollars, lying and promising the animals will always be small. They are con artists. Packerson, who has saved over 1,000 pigs since founding the rescue 23 years ago, says she gets 20 calls a day from people trying to get rid of their pet pigs. Anna Key, vice president of North American Potbelly Pig Association, estimated that about 90% of pigs adopted in the United States are later taken to a rescue or to a sanctuary. Holly Sama ordered a piglet costing $2,500 from a breeder who promised it would stay small. She had to give it up to a sanctuary when it grew to 150 pounds.
One of the world's most endangered creatures faces a horrific crisis that could wipe them from the face of the earth. Radiated tortoises, who are native to the Indian Ocean island of Madagascar, will be extinct in under 20 years unless we act immediately.
The turtle and its land-loving cousin, the tortoise, have been plodding along, slow and steady, for more than 200 million years. But their hard shells are little protection from human predators and a booming illegal animal trade.
When we learned that smugglers had been caught with over 800 of these beautiful creatures, our partners, Turtle Survival Alliance Madagascar, or TSA Madagascar, rushed to the rescue.
Turtles and tortoises in trouble. More than half of all species faced extinction. On the island of Madagascar, locked gates, razor wire fences, and 24-hour armed guards protect one of the world's rarest treasures. That treasure, worth roughly $50,000 each on the black market, is the last wild population of critically endangered plowshare tortoise, the rarest tortoise on the planet. Turtles and tortoises grow slowly, mature late, and live a very long time. This slow and steady lifestyle strategy has served them well for millions of years, but now, in the face of modern pressures, it can be a big liability. In May 2020, Mexican authorities confiscated more than 15,000 freshwater turtles illegally bound for the pet trade in China. Though it was the largest confiscation of turtles ever reported, the story is not a new one. In southern Madagascar, agents rescued almost 11,000 critically endangered eradicated tortoises from a house in 2018. In the same year, researchers found 65 different species of tortoise and freshwater turtles for sale in the markets of Jakarta, Indonesia. Half of these were threatened with extinction. For the world's 25 most endangered tortoises and freshwater turtles, trade exploitation is the largest threat they face. International trade in turtles and tortoises is most common in East Asia. Legal and illegal trade networks coming primarily out of North America, Europe, and Africa supply markets with turtles and tortoises for use in food and traditional medicine and as pets in the pet industry. The demand for turtles and tortoises as pets is a growing trend. Primarily in Asia, rare species are seen as status symbols and collector's items and are sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Authorities estimate millions of freshwater turtles and tortoises are exported from North America, Europe, and Africa each year. Turtle farms supply a vast majority of animals to markets, but many are still captured from the wild. In some cases, turtle farms are used to disguise illegal activities. A farm might supplement its stock with wild-caught populations and lie about the origins of where it came from. Farms also engage in turtle laundering. For instance, if a tortoise is smuggled from Madagascar to China, it is no longer protected by native species laws in Madagascar and can be sold legally out of a Chinese turtle farm claiming it is captive bred. Exotic pet trade responsible for hundreds of invasive species around the globe. A 2012 study found that the Burmese python population in Florida has exploded since 2000 and occupied an ever-growing geographic range that has serious implications for local biodiversity, habitats, and putting native wildlife at risk of full-on extinction. The snakes were originally brought to the U.S. via the pet trade, then released into the wild, probably once the owners realized their new pet can grow, because they didn't know their new pet can grow to as much as 23 feet long. According to a new study published in the journal Frontiers in Ecology, the Environment last week, Burmese pythons in Florida are just one prime example of the hundreds of non-native and invasive species that are harming native species and ecosystems around the world, thanks to the multi-billion-dollar exotic pet trade industry. The researchers behind that study say that the number of invasive species will most likely continue to rise. The increasing popularity of reptiles as pets has brought with it a corresponding increase in the number of displaced and unwanted pet reptiles, just like the clogs, cats, or pot-bellied pigs before them. Reptiles are being discarded after they lost their novelty appeal or become too big, difficult, expensive, or problematic for their owners. Humane societies, zoos, and reptile rescue organizations receive a seemingly endless stream of calls from pet owners wishing to dispose of their reptiles. Unfortunately, many reptile owners assume that if they get tired of their pet, or if for some reason they can no longer take care of the animal, they can just take it to the local zoo and the zoo will be happy to accept it. Unfortunately, this could not be further from the truth. Some zoos consider offers of unwanted pet reptiles and other exotic animals on a case-by-case basis, but most simply outright refuse them altogether. Humane societies, wildlife rehabilitation centers, wildlife educators, and others who deal with wild animals are not an option either. Most are already filled to capacity with unwanted people's pets and are unable to take more in anymore. Occasionally, abandoned or escaped reptile pets survive. Some even reproduce and establish self-sustaining populations. This can be devastating consequences on biodiversity and native wildlife species. For example, wild Nile monitor lizards, a predator that will consume snakes or other lizards, young alligators, birds, eggs, and small mammals are now established in several locations in Florida. In addition to outcompeting native wildlife, these lizards may pose a threat. Protected burrowing owl. In Canada, non-native red-eared slider turtles have become established throughout the Great Lakes and in many parts of western Canada. These aggressive turtles compete with native turtle species with potentially damaging results.
These people are in a state of grief. The reason? Brace yourself. The video you're about to see is difficult to watch. A horse named Susie was the first to go. She crashed through a fence while having seizures. Turtle, who once gave rides to wounded warriors and competed in jumping competitions, stumbled to regain his footing before collapsing. Another show horse named Gucci can be seen in this video writhing on the ground and gasping for air before she succumbed. For 11-year-old Sydney Laux, losing her best friend Olaf is heartbreaking. Gemma Blumenschein also can't believe her prize pony Cody is gone. Others dread the day they will also have to say goodbye to their sick horses.
I just try to stay by his side and help him and just try to tell him it's okay.
So far, 13 horses have died. Sadly, these horses grazing along a lovely green pasture are also doomed, and there is nothing veterinarians can do to save them.
They will never get better. They will only get worse. They all have a death sentence.
So what is going on here? According to Katie Flanagan, owner of Black Fence Farm in Clovis, California, the cause of death is the same. All these horses housed at her stables were given contaminated food to eat. In a lawsuit, Katie alleges lab results show that the feed from this plant, Western Milling, was tainted with monensin, an additive commonly used in cattle feed, but is highly toxic when eaten by horses.
Nestlé has received praise this week over its admission on Monday that slave labour in Thailand is used in its supply chain for seafood. PR Week quoted consultants describing the announcement that it was working to combat the problem as brave and positive.
Deadly horse feed blamed in killing dozens of pet horses. Lawsuit filed against feed company for selling toxic horse feed. Toxic horse feed that left more than 50 show horses either dead or severely sickened in California filed a complaint against Western Milling for selling horse feed containing mosolin, a common food additive for beef or dairy cattle that is lethal and deadly to horses. Katie says this is not the first time this has happened at Western Milling, and that the company has a long, ugly history of allowing its horse feed to become contaminated. Documents obtained show Western Milling knew about cross-contamination issues, including evidence of past violations, including alternate feed dating back to 2009, according to reports received from the FDA. JBS, the world's largest pet food ingredient supplier, was caught using child labor. The world's largest meat producer and animal feed and pet food ingredient supplier has been caught using child labor to clean and sanitize their slaughterhouses in the United States. 190 children, ages 13 to 17, cleaned dangerous equipment with corrosive cleaners during overnight shifts. JBS, whose deep ties to the animal feed and pet food industry should make consumers pause and consider if the pet food contains products produced by the exploitation of children. Nestle Purina, accused of using fish tied to slave labor and canned cat food. A nationwide class of pet food consumers filed a lawsuit alleging that Nestle Purina, that the pet food manufacturer knowingly supports a system of slave labor and human trafficking to produce its Fancy Feast cat food, while hiding its involvement with human rights violations from the public. The complaint alleges that Nestle works with a Thai partner, Thai Union Frozen Products, to import more than 28 million pounds of seafood-based cat and dog food ingredients, which were obtained through slave labor. For many top pet food brands, according to the United States Customs documents, including Nestle, the lawsuit draws extensively from a recent New York Times investigate report, Sea Slaves, the Human Misery That Feeds Pets and Livestock, that described horrific conditions in which workers on Thai vessels, virtual floating prisons far from the shore, are beaten or even murdered in the production of small foraged fish that become food for pets.
Come on, get down, man. I told you I'd pay you guys. Pick up the birds. She has nothing to do with it. Let her go.
What happened to Moses Law and Lila Buritan?
I told you I'd give you your money.
Did Moses Law's questionable business dealings come back to haunt him? Or was someone after the rare, expensive birds?
If someone had in fact killed them for birds, the birds that were missing were not the right birds. Birds that were worth $2,000 in adjoining cages were left behind. If they met with foul play because people wanted to take the birds, they took the wrong birds.
And the question remains who and why, because it seemed that Moses had several people that he was involved with in things that were either legal, illegal, or borderline. And Lila is not explained because nobody seems to have anything bad to say about her whatsoever. Lila doesn't seem to have any involvement with anyone that is in any way unusual. She seemed to be very happy in her solitude. The birds were her world. She didn't much care for anything outside of that world.
My gut feeling is she's dead. To me, that's the only way Lila would leave her birds, is if she was dead or so afraid for her life. That's the only way she would leave that place.
Police believe that Hari Gobin is crucial to solving this case. If he indeed witnessed a kidnapping, he undoubtedly knows vital details that could help the police.